Okay, as we continue talking about the takeaway, we've defined what the club face is supposed to do. We want to hinge the palm so the face is toward the ground. We want to make sure we're loading into the back glute so we're using our body. Now let's talk about what the shaft is supposed to do. We want to swing the shaft on plane. You know, we throw that phrase around in the instruction industry all the time. We know what it means, but sometimes I don't think everybody understands exactly what it means. Let me make it crystal clear to you. When we say swing plane or swing the shaft on plane, what we're talking about is when you hinge the golf club a little deeper in the takeaway, it's got to point somewhere. Well, guess what? If the shaft is pointing at the golf ball, we're on plane. If we hinge that golf club like this, it's on a flat plane. That's a problem because then in the downswing, I've got to reorient the shaft to get it toward the golf ball. And then if I swing the club on a steep plane, that would mean the shaft is kind of standing up and down where the butt of the golf club is kind of pointing at the toe line. Whenever you do that, then on the downswing, you have to shallow it. Guess what? A lot of tour players have that type of pattern, right? Where they go back, it's steep on the backswing, and then they lay it down on the downswing. That's acceptable. All right, what's not acceptable is when you get that shaft too flat and then you have to go over it. The problem with that is anytime you have to go over the top of your backswing plane, you're throwing the club away early. And so you're losing a lot of power, you're losing a lot of distance when you do that. Matter of fact, I've had a lot of students that come to me and say, you know, I'm over the top, it's my biggest problem. That's not the biggest problem. The real biggest problem is that they get the shaft flat and they have to come over the top. As a matter of fact, they better come over the top. So the problem isn't over the top, the problem is why we do it. So bottom line is, when we take the club back, as we get deeper into the takeaway, right, we need to let the wrist hinge so the shaft can point at the golf ball or even a little inside of the golf ball, because either one allows us to lay the club down. That allows us to store the energy. So if you're looking at it from this view, when I'm coming here and I'm laying that shaft down, I'm storing that energy so I'd get a little more lag, so that by the time I get into impact, I'm going to have more power. So keep this in mind. When you get deeper in your takeaway, allow the wrist to hinge so the shaft stands up. If you've got a mirror behind you, just try to look to see that shaft is somewhere between kind of your neck and shoulder and above your elbow. What you don't want is you don't want that shaft looking like this. No good. So if you got a mirror behind you, you can train that. And again, I emphasize all the time, you can train these moves without hitting one golf ball. So palm down hinge. As you load that glute, you go a little further, let the wrist hinge a little more so that shaft's kind of running somewhere around the shoulder line. So eventually as we get into downswing, we can lay the shaft down. So there's how we're going to get a little deeper into that takeaway. Next up, I'm going to blend the three parts. We're going to talk about club face, blending the club face, what the body and what the shaft are doing into a perfect takeaway position so we can build your swing from there. It's like putting a puzzle together. So stay tuned.